Nvidia and Perplexity, reshaping Europe's AI landscape. Nvidia and AI search firm Perplexity said they are joining hands with model builders and cloud providers across Europe and the Middle East to refine sovereign large language models, LLMs, and accelerate enterprise AI uptake in local industries. This not only increases model choice for enterprises, but also disrupts legacy procurement patterns for GPUs, cloud capacity, and AI infrastructure, said Sanchit Gogia, Chief Analyst and CEO at Greyhound Research. As Nvidia rolls out its AI factories across Europe, including large-scale H100 and Blackwell GPU clusters, supply will rise, but so will competition for priority access. For CIOs, the implication is clear. GPU reservation and pricing are no longer background infrastructure, but board-level variables, Gogia added. Enterprises must now negotiate burst entitlements, reserve tiers, and failover pathways to hedge against partnership-induced resource contention. This alliance may strengthen Europe's AI sovereignty, but also intensifies infrastructure nationalism, and buyers must recalibrate accordingly. Almost 67% of CIOs in France, Germany, and the Nordics carry out quarterly audits of their AI systems to check compliance with the EU AI Act, and 54% of those executives cite local hosting without upstream transparency as a regulatory blind spot, according to Greyhound Research. Hosting such models in European data centers supports compliance with GDPR and national data sovereignty ambitions, but does not absolve vendors of obligations under Articles 13 and 53 to 55 of the AI Act, Gogia said. These require a sufficiently detailed summary of training data, technical documentation on model risks, and structured record-keeping for public audits. As quoted in computerworld.com, in an article authored by Persist by Thomas published on June 12, 2025, beyond the media quote, our view in full. Press for time? You can focus solely on the Greyhound flashpoints that follow. Each one distills the full analysis into a sharp, executive-ready takeaway, combining our official standpoint, validated through pulse data from ongoing CXO trackers, and grounded in field notes from real-world advisory engagements. Synthetic data for local AI in Europe. Promise requires proof. Greyhound Flashpoint. Synthetic data is fast becoming a crutch for Europe's sovereign AI ambitions, especially in languages where authentic corpora are scarce. Nvidia's partnership with Perplexity and regional players leans heavily on synthetic augmentation to overcome training deficits. But per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 59% of CIOs across France, Spain, and Poland cite accuracy, irreproducibility, and cultural mismatch as critical concerns when synthetic data replaces native language samples. While synthetic augmentation helps bridge corpus gaps, it does not absolve vendors from disclosing lineage, validating model outputs, or mitigating social and legal risks. In high-stakes functions, like legal interpretation or citizen support, enterprises must demand proof, not promises. Greyhound standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, synthetic data, though technically essential for low-resource European languages, must be scrutinized across three dimensions: accuracy, fidelity, bias propagation, and intellectual property provenance. First, accuracy cannot be claimed on average performance metrics alone. CIOs must push for task-specific benchmarks, such as semantic coherence in legal documents or cultural nuance in customer support, that are validated against real-world inference tasks. Second, bias mitigation must be independently certified. Generating synthetic diversity is not the same as achieving representational fairness, especially in multilingual, multicultural contexts. Finally, IP chain of custody is non-negotiable. EU enterprises are now accountable for ensuring that synthetic content doesn't carry embedded copyright infringement risks or leak derivative traces from original pre-training sets. These dimensions are amplified under the EU AI Act, where transparency of training sources and reproducibility of outputs are regulatory mandates, not suggestions. For enterprises, the choice isn't synthetic versus authentic. It's verifiable versus unverifiable. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 shows that 68% of enterprise CIOs across regulated sectors in Europe now mandate AI vendors to deliver comprehensive lineage disclosures before pilot approvals. This includes source attribution for real and synthetic data, documentation on augmentation techniques, and associated licenses. In regions like Belgium, Italy, and the Nordics, over half of respondents flagged synthetic data opacity as a primary reason for delaying LLM-based deployments in legal tech, health informatics, and public sector translation engines. Crucially, 71% of CIOs reject synthetic data, entirely for mission-critical inference unless co-validated by domain experts and linguists. This marks a clear shift. Sovereign AI must now meet sovereign evidence thresholds. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a recent Greyhound field note from a multilingual legal tech implementation in Brussels, a model trained on synthetic Flemish and Hungarian corpora was piloted to summarize civil documents and case precedents. Despite vendor claims of 91% benchmark performance, the model misinterpreted entitlements under social welfare statutes due to semantic distortion. A live demo with a legal review board exposed hallucinated clauses, triggering an emergency audit. Upon scrutiny, the vendor could not produce documentation for the synthetic augmentation pipeline or confirm the source model's cultural calibration. The engagement was paused and procurement reissued under stricter conditions, requiring co-creation with linguists, human-in-the-loop validation, and a clause-level accuracy dashboard. This case underlines a growing consensus. Synthetic multilingualism must be supervised, not assumed. In-country hosting is not a compliance panacea under EU AI Act. Greyhound Flashpoint. In-country hosting of Nvidia Perplexity reasoning models within Europe offers a welcome pivot towards sovereignty, but it is not a regulatory safety net. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 71% of European CIOs flag model origin, pre-training transparency, and telemetry control as unresolved risks, even when infrastructure remains EU local. The EU AI Act requires more than server location. It mandates operational explainability, structured risk documentation, and traceable training data disclosures. Enterprises must treat sovereign AI as a stack-wide discipline, not a checkbox based on geography. Greyhound Standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, the EU AI Act mandates that AI models, especially general-purpose and high-impact systems, be transparent about how they are trained, fine-tuned, and updated. Hosting such models in European data centers supports compliance with GDPR and national data sovereignty ambitions, but does not absolve vendors of obligations under Articles 13 and 53 to 55 of the AI Act. These require a sufficiently detailed summary of training data, technical documentation on model risks, and structured record-keeping for public audits. CIOs must insist on visibility into pre-training corpora, update cycles, and inference telemetry routes. In practice, even EU-hosted models may maintain external callbacks for configuration or usage analytics, creating data trails that extend beyond sovereign borders. Procurement, therefore, must evolve. Not only should contracts specify physical hosting, they must also demand assurances of architectural locality and operational autonomy, including API inspection rights, static inference modes, and optional fine-tuning air gaps. Compliance is no longer about server locations. It's about lifecycle observability. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 reveals that 67% of CIOs across France, Germany, and the Nordics now conduct quarterly AI operational audits to ensure end-to-end alignment with EU AI Act guidance. Among these, 54% flagged local hosting without upstream transparency as a regulatory blind spot. Notably, 46% of respondents experienced difficulty obtaining detailed documentation from vendors about how hosted models are updated or governed post-deployment, particularly when federated learning is involved. This has led to the inclusion of explainability SLAs and sovereign telemetry constraints in recent AI procurement templates. The buyer narrative is shifting from compliance via infrastructure to compliance via introspection. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a recent Greyhound field note from a German automotive tier one supplier, a Perplexity-powered model was deployed via a Frankfurt-based cloud provider to localize internal documentation across 12 languages. While hosting was confirmed as EU-only, internal audit teams flagged real-time telemetry flowing back to a US-registered inference optimization service. This was neither documented nor permissioned in the contract. Despite encryption and role-based access, the callback was deemed non-compliant under Article 13 of the EU AI Act and Article 32 of GDPR. As a result, the deployment was paused, and the enterprise shifted to a containerized, self-updating version with a federated audit log and sovereign update cadence. This friction illustrates the new gold standard: full transparency, not just regional proximity. Nvidia Perplexity Alliance will reshape Europe's AI compute landscape. Greyhound Flashpoint. The Nvidia Perplexity Alliance is not just a model play. It is a geopolitical inflection point in Europe's AI infrastructure build-out. With sovereign model development accelerating across the continent, this partnership rebalances GPU demand, reshapes cloud pricing, and redefines procurement for enterprise LLM use. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 63% of European tech leaders forecast a GPU market squeeze as elite AI collaborations drive preferential access and allocation shifts. This deal is about more than Perplexity's interface or Nvidia's silicon. It is about who controls the pipes, power, and provisioning of next-gen AI. Greyhound standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, the Nvidia Perplexity partnership represents a dual consolidation. Nvidia anchors itself deeper into Europe's sovereign AI ambitions, while Perplexity gains strategic distribution leverage across regional deployment zones. This not only increases model choice for enterprises, but also disrupts legacy procurement patterns for GPUs, cloud capacity, and AI infrastructure. As Nvidia rolls out its AI factories across Europe, including large-scale H100 and Blackwell GPU clusters, supply will rise, but so will competition for priority access. Elite model partnerships often trigger upstream reprioritization by cloud providers, allocating burst capacity to anchor tenants and model builders, not general-purpose workloads. For CIOs, the implication is clear. GPU reservation and pricing are no longer background infrastructure. They are board-level variables. Enterprises must now negotiate burst entitlements, reserve tiers, and failover pathways to hedge against partnership-induced resource contention. This alliance may strengthen Europe's AI sovereignty, but it also intensifies infrastructure nationalism, and buyers must recalibrate accordingly. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 finds that 58% of CIOs in healthcare, BFSI, and media sectors have already flagged GPU provisioning as a strategic procurement variable, with 46% reporting deferred LLM pilots due to capacity reassignment. In France and the Netherlands, 3 in 5 CIOs are exploring sovereign cloud zones or co-located GPU blocks to decouple compute from multi-tenant dependency risk. Across Europe, a growing share of AI budget line items now include GPU cost hedging strategies, such as hybrid edge clusters, reserve quota pricing, and containerized inference nodes with minimal cloud reliance. Nvidia's partnership footprint, while catalytic for infrastructure, is also reshaping enterprise forecasting models across sectors. Greyhound Field Notes. Per a recent Greyhound Field Note from a Paris-based healthcare consortium, an LLM-powered anomaly detection tool for cardiology trials was scheduled to go live on a public cloud platform. Just 2 weeks prior, the provider onboarded a new foundation model partner, Perplexity included, and reprioritized GPU burst pools without advance notice. The clinical AI pipeline stalled for 11 days, disrupting ethics approvals and trial pacing. Despite contractual assurances, the absence of compute isolation led to a re-architecture. The CIO deployed on-premise L40 GPU clusters with Kubernetes-managed fallback to cloud for only non-diagnostic workloads. This incident captures a hardening trend. AI innovation is not just about smarter models, but smarter infrastructure governance. Analyst in focus, Sanchit Gogia. Sanchit Gogia, or SVG as he is popularly known, is a globally recognized technology analyst, innovation strategist, digital consultant, and board advisor. SVG is the chief analyst, founder and CEO of Greyhound Research, a global, award-winning technology research, advisory, consulting, and education firm. Greyhound Research works closely with global organizations, their CXOs, and the board of directors on technology and digital transformation decisions. SVG is also the founder and CEO of the House of Greyhound, an eclectic venture focusing on interdisciplinary innovation. Copyright policy. All content contained on the Greyhound Research website is protected by copyright law and may not be reproduced, distributed, transmitted, displayed, published, or broadcast without the prior written permission of Greyhound Research or, in the case of third-party materials, the prior written consent of the copyright owner of that content. You may not alter, delete, obscure, or conceal any trademark, copyright, or other notice appearing in any Greyhound Research content. We request our readers not to copy Greyhound Research content and not republish or redistribute them, in whole or partially, via emails or republishing them in any media, including websites, newsletters, or intranets. We understand that you may want to share this content with others, so we've added tools under each content piece that allow you to share the content. If you have any questions, please get in touch with our community relations team at connect@thofker.com.